Not a, again, so Reuven saw something happen, a car hit another car, and the other Jewish person took the other Jewish person to court. Does Reuven have to testify? And the reason why the question is a question is because if it would be in a Beit Din, we usually have a general rule, al pi shnei eidim yakum davar. Based on two witnesses, a matter is established. If you don't have two witnesses, so it's not an established matter, and therefore, al pi din, at least by the letter of the law, the Beit Din can't obligate him to pay if it was his word versus his word and one witness. What it could be is the witness could then make the other person obligated to make an oath. But at the end of the day, if he would make an oath, or if he doesn't, they don't, he's believable or he's not believable. It becomes a little bit of a question. So what do you do in that case?
One witness is not good.
It's not enough to flat out obligate on the money, but it could obligate in a shvuah. Today we don't really make oaths in Beit Din today because we're afraid that people don't care so much. They're not as fearful as they used to be. In any case though, so by letter of the law, two witnesses you would need in order to extract the money. One witness wouldn't work. So now Reuven, if he's going to testify in court, they'll probably will say one witness is enough. And they will, without even needing to make an oath, they will just make Shimon pay. Now you've created a situation where you're obligating something which the Torah won't obligate by. That's a problem. That could be considered causing a nezek unnecessarily to the person who, if he would have went to a din Torah, he would not have had to pay.
You can sue him back in the din Torah.
Right. So the question really I'm asking is, do I therefore have an obligation to testify? Because I know that Beis Din won't make me pay, won't make the other person pay, but in court they will. So Reb Stern he has a commentary called Imri.
Make him the obligation to testify.
Who? Because he's telling the truth, what he saw with his eyes, he should say.
If there's a summons.
Well, let's say there wasn't a summons, but he saw.
Well, let's say there was a summons.
Okay, well, he has no choice.
He does have to testify then, right?
Is he allowed to say, I will not testify? If he was summoned, he was subpoenaed?
No, I don't think so.
So if he's not allowed to, he has to do what he has to do. He has to say then.
Reaching the court.
Right. But if he wasn't by law obligated, then the question is, halachically is he obligated to go forth? Because maybe it's a mitzvah. He's saving his money, his friend's money. He's doing a Shavas Aveda. But on the other hand, by Torah law, you wouldn't have to testify. So many Rabbanim say you don't have an obligation to that, and you shouldn't.
Unless you testify, like you become like a rodef, no?
Oh, if we're endangering someone's life, that's another story. No, I'm not talking about all that stuff. I'm talking about just like it was an accident, and now the question is, do I have to go and present over my testimony when no one officially subpoenaed me? Yeah, because in a way you're causing what the Torah would not obligate a person, and you are right, yeah. At least that's what some say. That's what the author of this Sefer I'm holding says. I don't know. Maybe there's others that disagree. Now there's another question. We have the following question. If a person can benefit from his testimony, example, I am testifying on behalf of someone else, but I benefit out of my own testimony because by me saying something, he's like a friend of mine or maybe either a friend or something where it's better that he should win because if he wins, maybe he can then pay me back what he owed me in some sort of benefit, whatever it may be. Tzad hanar yesh bedavar. There's some sort of benefit in this matter. Question is, will we accept such testimony? We know that we're not allowed to take the testimony of a Rasha. We're not allowed to take the testimony of a person who's known as a liar. We're not allowed to take the testimony of a relative. Can I take the testimony of a kosher person, but he benefits from his... He's no Gebedover. Says the Shulchan Aruch in Siman Lamed Zayin in Choshen Mishpat in chapter 37, it says that as follows. These matters are dependent on the understanding of the judge of the case and his understanding of it. He has to really have a good understanding of this. He has to understand what will cause what. He needs to see if the hana that's involved, the benefit that's involved, even if it's by a far way of benefit, so he cannot testify. So it really depends if how the dayan sees it. If it's really like a basic, not a big benefit, and it won't make a difference, and how he understands this person, he doesn't see any problem, then that's fine. Then he can let him testify. But if he understands that he's nogea b'davar, he's indebted to that person, whatever it may be, then he may not testify. He may not accept the testimony of that person. Okay. Now another question is, it said earlier, we earlier mentioned that if you saw something which was fit for be testimony and you gave it over, so then chayiv is something that you're fit and you're kosher to testify, you are obligated to testify. The obligation is bidei shemaim. The obligation is by heaven, by the court from heaven obligates you to testify. Question is, and if you don't, so then what's the punishment? You get punished not from the Beit Din down below, because it says, the Gemara in Bava Kama tells us that if a person knew testimony and he withholds it, it says it's a spiritual punishment. It's not a physical. Beit Din can't do anything to you. However, the question that some ask is, what if he was under 20 years old? We know that spiritual punishments are only on someone of the age of 20 and above. If he's under the age of 20, he's not obligated in a spiritual sense. So then does he have a spiritual obligation to come forth and tell over his testimony? And this matter is actually a doubt amongst the poskim. But it really depends on how big of a situation it is or like. I mean, of course, it would be proper to testify, but it might be that if he didn't, he's not obligated unless he would be 20 years old. Another thing the Alter Rebbe wrote down was that this testimony, this obligation to testify is only if he claims you and he summons you. The Baal Din says, I need you to testify. I was once in a situation where somebody actually needed the person to testify and the person was afraid to testify. So I called them up and asked them to come forth to testify. And the Pasha were afraid. They were afraid of what the family or someone would do to them, or how much influence or so would hurt them by them testifying. And the truth is that person didn't come forth, and it cost that person it was a big damage that cost them. And they really need to come forth. They really can't be afraid. Now in the secular court, yes, there are protection programs. For example, they won't make it public. They won't let people come forth. But there's no way to 100% protect a witness at the end of the day, because if he really has the connections, he could. But if you need to come forth, you need to come forth. And as it says here, you have to come forth. And I will say though, the question that everyone asks is, okay, so one second. And if he doesn't ask him to come forth, and you do know that the testimony, and you don't want to come forth, so you're okay. You saw something, you and another person, both sides. So now there's two witnesses who could come forth, who could say something of, or one witness, and sometimes that helps in certain scenarios. You're not going to testify just because he didn't ask you. In other words, if you don't, you're not punishable, or you're not doing anything wrong. You're not obligated to testify. And the answer, and the Alter Rebbe in a simple sense says, it's only if you're asked. And that's what the Rambam said. We learned on, I think, last Thursday. So how do we understand this? So the truth of the matter is that a lot of the Mefarshim explain that this is not to be taken literally, that only if he asks you. Actually, even if he doesn't ask you, you also have to come forth. How do we understand the Rambam? How do we understand how the Alter Rebbe quotes him? What does it mean? So there's a couple explanations for it. Not one explanation brought down is that the Erech Hashai, he says as follows. He says that this that he needs to ask you to testify, this is only in a case mistama yodea baldin mihemeda. This is when you can assume that the litigant knows who the witnesses were, and he's not asking you. So if he's not asking you, so it probably means you don't have to. If he doesn't mind. But if he doesn't even know that you were a witness, that you saw everything and you could come forth, then even if he doesn't ask you, says Derech Hashai, you have an absolute obligation to come forth. And if you don't, it could be Lo Yisamad al Dam Reyecha, Hashavas Aveda, whatever it may be, all these prohibitions that by you not coming forth, you would be causing him a big loss. Again, that's if he didn't ask you. If he doesn't know that you were a witness, but he would be happy to know, and if he would, he definitely would ask you, then you do have to come forth. That's one explanation. There is also the Shara Mishpat. The Shara Mishpat is a commentary on the Rambam. He says that similarly, that if a person knows testimony for his friend, and the Baal Din does not He doesn't know on the matter, so he's not mechuyev. But if they already are in the middle of the dintar, in other words, like this. If the Rambam and the Alter Rebbe were saying that you don't have to testify unless he asks you, that's talking about if no dintar took place. But if there was a litigation or so that took place, so for sure you have to testify, even if he doesn't ask you, because maybe if he wasn't going to a dintar, he's mochel. Sometimes people just are absolutely mochel. They don't mind. They're willing to be. They just want to stay out of everything. In that case, you don't have to testify. But if he's in a dintar, even if he's not asking, of course you have an obligation to come forth to testify. So that's the two general answers which they give on that case. So, of course, if you saw something and it was very important and it could cost the person a lot of money or be a big factor, of course you should testify. That's even if he didn't see anything, if he didn't ask you. If he asked you, how much more so? And then there's a very, very interesting thing in the end of the first sif. Alter Rebbe says something, and like this. He says as follows. He says, says Alter Rebbe, if you're one witness and you're not with a second witness, you don't have an obligation to testify. Ella b'davar sheba mamin shemevi lidei shvua. If there's one witness, you are that only witness, you don't know anyone else who saw anything, you should testify. Because it's a money matter. Because as we said earlier, at least you'll make the guy obligated in a shvua. At least he'll obligate, and if he doesn't want to swear, or if they feel that they don't trust him, so then they'll make him pay. So on that, there is a tayalis to testify as one witness. Or let's say there is a thing where the question everyone's asking, where is this meat from? Was this from the kitchen a minute ago, or was this from, or this thing, where did it come from? Or was this stolen or not? And the person knows to keep everyone from doing something forbidden, and you know you're one witness. One witness is believed to say it's mutter, it's not mutter. We don't need two witnesses to testify that this thing is allowed or not allowed. In that case as well, one witness should come forth. He has to. However, there's a very important rule. If the Isser was done already, let's say somebody did something which wasn't a nice thing, it was already done, it had nothing to do with money, it had to do with other things, you're not allowed to testify. If you are the only one that knows about it. If there were two, that's another story. But if you're the only one, no, you don't testify. And if you do so, it's considered Motzi Shemra. What's Motzi Shemra? So there is Lashon Hara and there's Motzi Shemra. The difference is very simple. Lashon Hara just means you're telling the truth about someone, and it's not nice. It'll hurt them. So that's called Lashon Hara. You're not supposed to do that. And then we have another thing called Motzi Shemra, which means you're not even telling the truth. That's the Torah talks about that case. They said, my fiance, she wasn't faithful. And then they check, they see he lied, they punish him. That's called Motzi Shemra. You're giving a bad reputation on something that wasn't even true. So if you have one witness, the rule is, do we believe him on something which is not relevant to money? The answer is, we don't believe you. So if you do testify, it's called Motzi Shemra. It's called that you're now giving them a bad reputation, and you're not supposed to do that. One witness is not believed to testify to punish another person with their own testimony. As it says, Lo yakum eid echad ba'ish. One witness cannot testify on another person. L'chol avon on any sin. Avol shnayim chayivim lahoit. If it would be two, then they have to testify. She'ainu sho'adam alavera. Because then they can testify. They can say what they saw, punish that person on that thing, whatever it was. Because this is actually a mitzvah then to testify, as it says, Uviarta hara mikir becha. You're going to remove the bad amongst you. It could be whether it was a death penalty or a capital punishment, they saw something which was a very, very big offense, or any other avera. They have then a mitzvah to testify, to give the proper punishment. But if you would be just one witness, then no. The Alter Rebbe says in Hilchos Rosh Hashanah, Hilchos Tefillah, about a person, if we wasn't sure, it could be chazan or below shofar or something. If it was one person who knows something, he shouldn't come forth. However, if you already believe it, and that's another story. If everyone already believes it, that's another story. But if he didn't come forth, he really shouldn't say. Okay. Because of this rule we said. Okay, how much mincha soon? 1 minute. Okay, last thing we'll say over here. Halacha Beis, the Alter Rebbe says, Talmud Chacham that knows testimony on his friend, and that person asked the Talmud Chacham to testify, he doesn't have an obligation to testify if the court is smaller than him. Why? Because the honor of his Torah doesn't have to. He doesn't have to grade his honor. It's very hard today to find people who are above, any other amount of people. But okay. But anyways, he can then ask other 3 people to come to him to accept his testimony. Okay. Yishlocho Gimel Nashim, the base of the Yad Bifnim, Al Yesh Be'edu Zu Tzad Afresh Miser, but if there is a side to remove from an Isser, then Ein Tvuna, Ein Chachma, Ein Tvuna Neger Hashem, he has to testify to remove people from doing something which is wrong.